because then I get it, and then that gives me a foundation to be able to get to more advanced concepts, but I have to start at the 6th grade level. So for me to understand what's going on in roads, if I can get the expert to help me walk through understanding it, I can then turn it into something, people who are new to it can understand too. Because if I can understand it, they can understand it.
Hey everybody, welcome to another Pulse podcast from Wavetronics, where we talk about the people and the ideas that are shaping the future of transportation. Today, we're joined by someone who has built a massive following by taking the sometimes complicated world of traffic and road design and turning it into engaging stories that millions can understand. You probably know him as Road Guy Rob from YouTube, where he dives into everything from diverging diamond interchanges to roundabouts, red lights, and beyond. Rob Sanders is your real name, right?
Yep.
Okay. Because I was wondering about that. Is first name Road, middle name Guy?
Well, I hope not.
Yeah, last name
Rob. Wrong with
Rob.
my parents if they did that.
Exactly. Rob Sanders has built a career rooted in storytelling, combining journalism, radio production, video production, and a knack for explaining how our roads actually work. So thanks so much for being here.
Well, thanks. Medium-sized following.
Medium, well, it depends. For somebody just starting out on YouTube, yours is a massive following, right?
Hey, at one point in my radio career, I happened to work in the same building as this guy. Now, we never crossed paths.
We haven't.
But I took his TV show and chopped it up into little radio segments. So it's kind of fun today to run into somebody who's storytelling I've heard before.
I wondered how that happened because I just heard from somebody one day, hey, I listened to your show on the radio.
Yeah.
What? I didn't know that was a thing. So.
Well, it's what happened when the university suddenly has a Sirius XM channel and they have to fill 24 hours a day and they go, uh-oh. Hey, here's the little $15 an hour guy. Hey, chop up these TV shows. So I had fun doing it.
Nice. So, we have that sort of common background. Sort of cross paths indirectly working for the same organization at the same time.
And my unspoken goal is that we're going to get way off topic, not talk about transportation at all, and do what happens when radio and TV people get together, ramble on endlessly about the decline of the industry.
Boy, we could go on and on, couldn't we?
I'll keep them happy.
So
we'll talk roads.
We'll talk roads eventually, but I'm really curious about your background and how this all happened. So
me too.
Isn't it funny? We all feel like that sometimes. Like, how did I get here?
Yeah, because it's there. You run across really driven people sometimes who are like, "Oh, I knew from the day I was born I wanted to do X, Y, and Z," and that's great. Everything happened by accident. I got interested in roads when I was a kid. I was born with a steering wheel in my hand. I wanted to drive a car since I was a kid. I buy the toy steering wheel joysticks that you plug into your computer so I could drive all the racing games, I was ready to drive. The state of Utah rebuilt Interstate 15 in Salt Lake County in the late 1990s when I was coming of age. They finished the freeway when I turned 16. My first drive in driver's ed class was to pick up a car from the district office with the instructor, and he had me drive back through the brand new freeway through the Spaghetti Bowl. And so to me, driving is like some people are with snowboarding or roller coasters, where they wanted, they go into engineering because they want to design roller coasters. I said, I'm going to be a civil engineer. I want to design freeways. The problem is, along the way, I also had a lot of fun. My dad gave me a little radio mixer board from Radio Shack. And I was like, I want to be a DJ. I want to be the guy on the top 40 station who comes on, it's a little after 8 o'clock at KIIS-FM AM Los Angeles, service of Connect Broadcasting with 52 minutes of music this hour, So these two loves have been pulling at me, but I dutifully, I went to BYU up here as an undergrad and majored in civil engineering, so that's a sensible thing to do.
Yes.
Got to calculus 2 and was so scared I ran as far away from math and STEM and engineering as I could. Yeah. I ended up in broadcast journalism.
It's exactly why I ended up in broadcast journalism, just like you.
Which class scared you?
Well, I didn't have to do any of those because I chose broadcast journalism from the start.
He had a plan.
I kind of did, and it sort of worked out.
Didn't just happen on accident, like me.
Well, it was funny because it sort of did a little bit. I mean, I was going to be a sports broadcaster.
Okay.
That was my plan. But then I did an internship, KSL TV, with just regular news. Absolutely fell in love with it. So it was a happy accident.
Well, and I always thought news people seem like so knowledgeable. They know everything. And then I've since learned, and this is the secret with Road Guy Rob, I'm not that smart. I get to talk to smart people.
Yeah.
They give me more information than I could ever play in the story. So then I take those extra bits of information and I get to say them on camera, and then I sound smart too.
Yeah.
And so that's what news people are, as I realize, oh, wow, they're experts in everything. Well, yeah, because they just spoke to an expert.
Exactly. Yeah. We just learned it and then we're regurgitating it. Do you feel like you need to, I don't want to say dumb it down, but simplify it for your viewers?
I do, because I need to.
Yeah.
Right. For me to grasp the concept, I have to kind of get it down to a 6th grade level. You know, this morning the marketing people took me on a tour of the facilities here at manufacturing. You know, and so I would kind of dumb things down, like this big machine that has parts that are stored vertically, and they have all these terms for it. And I go, oh, it's a parts elevator.
Yeah.
You know, because then I get it. You know, and then that gives me a foundation to be able to get to more advanced concepts, but I have to start at the 6th grade level. So for me to understand what's going on in roads, if I can get the expert to help me walk through understanding it, well then Radio Rob, which we'll talk about in a minute, I can then turn it into something, you know, people who are new to it can understand too. Because if I can understand it, they can understand it.
Yeah. So Radio Rob, was that college?
Well, yeah. So as I'm running away from civil engineering, I soldered together a little pirate radio transmitter, and I'd always been goofing around making fake radio production. I discovered radio jingles are made by these big production houses, and so the jingles I'd hear on radio stations in Salt Lake City, they'd be like, oh, that's actually from a station in LA or New York or whatever, and I just found it fascinating to, you know, and then that gets me on a whole thing about, well, maybe I can make my own, take that jingle from their production demo and make my own radio station out of it and stuff. So I, in Heritage Halls, had a pirate radio station, and get my roommate to do a live show once a week, and then I'd run it automated the rest of the week with spots, breaks, and imaging in between, you know, promos and everything between every single song. It wasn't your typical pirate station where you just play the album straight through. It was I wanted people to tune in and think they had come across a real radio station that didn't exist, you know. And I just found that so fun.
So you didn't make any money doing this?
Oh, no, I didn't have any listeners.
Yeah, well.
This was totally unsanctioned. It was out of my window.
Nice.
In the old Wells Hall at Heritage Halls. And but the fun was when we do the live show, we could get some girls to call in and request songs. And then what I'd do is I'd try to tape the call on a landline to a cassette, and then I'd run the cassette into my dorm room, and then we'd rewind the tape. So when we came out of the song, you could cue up the next song, just like a DJ, and then you'd hear the girls calling in, hey, we want to hear this song or whatever, you know. And then it would intro in with the music in the background. And I just thought, this is it. This is what I want to do for a career. But I knew I couldn't, because it was the beginning of corporate consolidation.
Yeah.
1996, they changed the law, and basically unlimited number of radio stations one company can own. And I knew the end was coming. I knew they were doing, you know, with computers, they could do more pre-recorded disc jockeys from other markets and stuff. But like it would be like somebody wanting to get into a tech field that AI is about to destroy, but they can't help themselves. They go into it anyway. Mm-hmm. I knew radio was going to be done soon, but I went into it anyway.
But then the possibilities now with all these different platforms, I mean, the opportunities seem endless.
But I didn't see it at the time.
Yeah.
So this was 2004. YouTube wasn't invented till 2005, and the concept of like doing professional content on YouTube wouldn't show up for like 10 more years. You know, I mean, the thought, if I had in, 2009 said, oh, I'm going to become a YouTuber who talks about transportation, that would have seemed insane. By the time I started doing it in 2018, it was like, oh, maybe that's a thing.
Yeah.
And now in 2025, it's like, well, of course, that's where you do it. So that's the thing I have hope for with, like, as AI is affecting a lot of industries, including my sister who just lost a job to AI, is that, okay, there's the initial distraction, but does everything sort of like rearrange, and then it opens up a lot of opportunities going forward.
Yeah, possibly. So college, you did radio then, and
Yes.
you thought you'd transition into doing that professionally?
Yeah, I mean, you go into a broadcast journalism major. The difference is I was the rain cloud in the class because I came in from a dying radio industry.
Yeah.
You know, I was working little radio jobs. There was a 1,000 watt AM station in Provo, the last of the little guys. A guy named Bob Morey, rest in peace. He's passed away. He's no longer with us. But I wrote a letter to him, and he hired me as a board op for 2 hours a week, $6 an hour.
Wow. And
I was excited because I was like, oh, I'm on the radio, you know. And then one day, yours truly, who was supposed to record the show properly back then you'd actually record it on a CD burner. Yeah. So if the host the next week was out sick, you'd come into work, he'd say, oh, just play the CD from last week. So I'm queuing up the CD, and I realized, that I chopped the beginning off. So I reach out to the boss and say, you know, I messed up. There's no intro to the show. And so he said, okay, just crack open the mic and say, this week's episode of Healthy, Wealthy, Wow is a pre-recorded program which we join already in progress. And I'm going, I'm going to be on the radio. I messed up, and I'm getting rewarded to be on air live.
Another happy accident.
And so I called, I think my grandmother lived in the South Valley of Salt Lake, which was like just close enough to be in range. I said, tune to AM 1400 to record the radio. So I have a recording of it. And so there's something about, I think radio's this way even more than TV, where you turn on the mic, like TV, when you go on live, it's live. And it's amazing what you can do when you know you can't edit. You just have to go. Yeah. And it's like, wow, I didn't stumble on a single word, you know. But radio, you're doing it in a booth all by yourself. And so it feels even more like I'm about to get into trouble or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's just such an addictive feeling to go live. I had to have more of that. So thankfully, as I got into the broadcast journalism program, Classical E19, the university owns it, but it's professional staff. They used to hire student employees to do live newscasts. And I ran with that. Yeah. You know, I actually went out and did real news coverage. I wouldn't just read it off the wire. I'd be a reporter some days, and I'd grab my mic and I'd run out.
Nice.
And it was just addictive. It's kind of like what you were describing with your internship at KSL, where you kind of get into this thing and you're like, this is just fun. You know, one of my professors said, you know you're in the right industry if you wake up every day and you say, I can't believe they're paying me to do this as a job. He says, if you don't feel that feeling, you're in the wrong industry.
Who was that?
Robert Walls.
Love that guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like he was my mentor. He's who I did my internship with at KSL. And yeah, I learned more from him. And he was, at that time, an adjunct part-time instructor. And now he's a full professor, I think. Yeah. But he was still working at KSL, and he was teaching in the evenings. Amazing information I got from this guy.
It's funny because when you take a news reporting, television news reporting class, compared to the academic rigor of, you know, your GEs, your History 202, and your philosophy, and, you know, even classes and other majors, math classes and stuff, it felt like I was cheating because, I mean, I remember the final was like, he goes, oh, I forgot to write a final. Do you guys want me to write a final? You don't? Okay, no final.
Wow.
Like, you know, he was that kind of a professor. So I thought, like, how's he even here? Now, here's the thing. I think about his class every single day because he taught active voice writing. If you write a sentence that's the cat was eaten by the dog, your brain has, when you write it on the page, it's not so bad, but when you say that out loud, the cat was eaten by the dog, you have to use more brain power because you think, okay, the cat, and then some verb about eating and a dog. So the cat ate the dog? No, by. Okay, I reverse it. Yeah. The dog ate the cat. Now, if you say the dog ate the cat, you pick it up right away. Yeah. So you put that into, I do this in Road Guy Rob, right? So it's the same principle of television news writing. Get the writing really clear and easy to understand. Don't muddy it up with bad writing. Cliches, avoid the cliches. Really bad television news writing's full of bad cliches.
Oh, yeah.
And so he had a whole sheet, and so I think about that a lot. How do I, AI's been useful for that, where I'm kind of writing out my script, and I go, I really want to say this, but that's too cliche, and so I'll put it in AI and say, come on, help me come up with something that's less cliche, just to make the writing better,
And that's what Robert Wells did. He made the writing better.
Yeah.
He's so good at teaching writing.
Yeah. So I appreciate I had 2 classes from him, and they're probably some of the classes I think about more than even the transportation classes I would take later, which we can also talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did Road Guy Rob happen then? I mean, what happened after college in classical 89?
Yeah. I graduated into the Great Recession. I used Pell Grants to delay graduating. I actually ended up double majoring in geography, which is urban planning related to transportation, just to buy time, because my class of broadcast graduates all bailed out April of 2009, which was the worst time to find a job, let alone a broadcast job. I'm like, forget about it, And so I dawdled around, and BYU Broadcasting was moving to a new building. Mm-hmm. And radio had all this old equipment that they needed to junk out. Me being Mr. Radio, I'm like, I'll go through, I'll tag all the equipment, I'll prep us for a move. And I guess that impressed the general manager, the station manager, enough that he said, hey, we're getting this channel on Sirius XM. You seem to be Mr. Radio. We'll hire you in like a really temporary capacity, which never really ended. But that's the nature of media. To stick around, be employee number 2 at this Sirius XM channel we were doing. And so that was a lot of fun. That's where I chopped up your audio. Yeah. And, I was never a host on the air, but doing a lot of production work, producing talk shows. And but it became clear, media companies, all of them, have a tendency to dangle a carrot, because there's always that potential for being able to do great things and make some money and get paid vacation days and sick time that doesn't materialize for most people, especially in radio. And I'm not picking up BYU Broadcasting specifically. That's all the radio industry. Companies. Yeah. Every single one of them. And so as I saw this carrot was dangling forever, and where am I going to go? To a different radio company that, is going to do the exact same thing? To call my boss's bluff, I said, I'm going back to grad school. I should have been a civil engineer. I saw apparently BYU would take you as a master's student even if you hadn't had the undergrad. You have to go back and take most of the undergrad. And so I thought, well, I'll apply to that. I'll have my boss write one of my letters, of recommendation. He'll see that. He'll realize how valuable I am. He'll try to scrounge up some kind of a full-time position for me. And then of course, they're not going to accept me. And the exact opposite happened. Wow. I got accepted to the grad program and didn't get any full-time work. So that was the beginning of shifting gears back and saying, all right, let's go be an engineer. And a program that, granted, I had to take a lot more classes, and I was very slow at taking classes, sometimes just 2 a semester because that's all I could handle. Because I never felt like an engineer. I felt like a radio talk show producer taking an engineering class. Most of my classmates would get their master's done in about 18 months. I had a limit of 5 years, and I used all 5 of them to get done. And but I learned a lot. Yeah. To at a master's level, play around with like traffic flow theory. The idea of all our streets we can divide into 2 categories: uninterrupted flow, which is a freeway or a country highway, and interrupted flow, which is streets with stop signs and stoplights. And that's it. Those are the only 2 kinds of roads, So it's like, now the math that goes beyond that starts to get really hairy. But I realized of all the engineerings, traffic engineering is one of the easiest for a common person to understand. It doesn't get into the weird stuff like, I have a cousin who got a PhD in medical engineering, and he had to learn how an MRI machine works, and it gets into extremely complicated calculus and things I'd struggle to understand. But when you're talking, well, how busy is the street going to be? It's just addition and subtraction. Well, this thing generates, 30 trips an hour, and this thing's 30 trips an hour, and you add them together, it's 60 trips an hour. That's the traffic on the street. So it makes traffic engineering, I think, a lot more accessible to a common person than some of these other fields of engineering that are genuinely complicated.
So a radio talk show host or producer, you said, trapped inside of an engineer. So did you pursue engineering at all?
Yeah, so I have been rejected by some of the best companies. I wanted to get out of Utah, so I moved to California, and I went to all these consulting firms. And the problem was they look at my resume and they see 4 or 5 different radio stations and zero engineering experience. Because I'm in my mid 30s at this point. I didn't feel I had the luxury to go take a low-paid or unpaid engineering internship, which is really what I needed to do if I was serious. I was still working with radio jobs because I was making $20 an hour, I paying rent, and I'm in my mid-30s. I got to support myself, and so I ran radio right up to the end, and I made the mistake a lot of college graduates do, which is a lot of times the employer cares more about what you can do than what you know. And the market at the time in 2018 in traffic was particularly tight. I think the companies still had a significant number of the baby boomer workforce. They hadn't retired yet at the senior level positions. And so a lot of the Gen Xers and, they hadn't moved up. Now the market's changed where most of the baby boomers have retired. The Gen Xers are the bosses now. And so millennials are now where the Xers are. And so it is opening up some opportunities, I think, that maybe weren't quite there in 18. But still, the underlying issue, it's hard to get somebody to want to hire you at an engineering place when they see internship at KSL and, 11 years with BYU Broadcasting and Citadel Broadcasting as a board op and all this stuff. That's not interesting to them.
Yeah.
I had one guy say, "Are you sure you don't want to go into PR?"
Yeah.
So
I could see that. That'd be a natural transition for you, right? With your skill set. So what was the aha moment that created Road Guy Rob?
The day I quit BYU Broadcasting, I quit at the same time I graduated because I figured it was just a nice clean break, rather than trying to get rehired in a staff position and everything. And I wanted to move. But I had 2 months left on my lease, so I wasn't racing out the door to relocate. And so I don't like to sit still. So I thought, well, what do people do when they're out of work? Oh, I'll drive Uber and Lyft. So I drove Uber and Lyft for a day, and I hated it. I'm very passionate about driving. My car is special space for me.
Yeah.
And it felt weird to have, for money, strangers occupying my car. And I didn't really make any money off of it. And I noticed that each ride would take me farther and farther from home. And so I'm like, well, when this is all over, I've got to drive all the way back, So I thought, well, I'll make a video about it.
Nice.
I'm not going to drive Uber and Lyft tomorrow. Why don't I sit down and make a video about it? So I wrote up a script, and I had my dash cam footage, and figured I can go back and get B-roll of places I'd been throughout the day. And so I needed some place to tape the stand-ups. That's, a TV term, right, for when I appear on camera. And so I thought, well, I want somewhere kind of interesting. I thought, well, at the top of a parking structure in downtown Provo. Well, what should I wear? Well, I don't know. I've got this bright green shirt. I had one of them, And I thought, well, some parking lot attendant or security guard's going to come by and see, even though it's a beat up tripod and a cell phone, they're going to wonder what I'm doing. So I thought, well, I've got this orange vest with my spare tire. I'll just toss that on, and that way I'll get left alone. You know? And
it's amazing how well that works.
You
put on the orange vest, nobody bugs you.
Yeah, because he looks like he knows what he's doing, so they leave me alone. So I that was the birth of the costume, was just purely an accident of just wanting security guards to leave me alone while I taped on top of a parking structure. So I made this video. I stuck it on YouTube on an account I had made. One of my talk hosts that I was a producer for is a guy named Matt Townsend. always was telling me, you just need to get out there on YouTube, make something. He came up with the name. He's like, you just need to be like Road Guy Rob, you know. It's I didn't come up with that. I actually thought the name sounded silly, you know. But I opened a YouTube account. If you actually look at the date, it's 2014. It was long before I started making videos because that was when Matt Townsend said I should open an account. So I did, and I never used it. So I thought, well, I got this Road Guy Rob account, and then this accidental costume. I posted the video online, and it started getting passed around on Reddit. And I got like 20,000 views. Nice. And people started subscribing. I had like 2,000 subscribers. I go, well, maybe I should make another one, you know? So I made a video, Springville. In fact, this town here, if you go to the old grid, they have really stupidly wide streets. You know, they're, 100 feet wide. Yeah. I mean, they're bigger than the biggest arterial boulevards you could have, you know? And so I got a video of talking about how to get people to slow down in neighborhoods. Well, you want to have, funny enough, this development here at Wavetronics, they have these really narrow streets with people parked on the street. You don't see a lot of people speeding through here, right? Because you feel uncomfortable. But you're on a 100-foot wide neighborhood street. It was shooting fish in a barrel. I was out there with my cell phone, and just everybody was going by 40 miles an hour in front of houses because you feel safe. Because you know, if a kid runs out chasing a ball, it's going to take him 30 seconds to get in the middle of the street. You know. So I made that into a video. Same thing. It got like 20,000 views. And so that was kind of the beginning of something that over time, you know, increased to where it became the medium-sized audience it is today.
I say it's massive, but you say it's medium. Did you have video production experience?
Yeah, in college, I had a friend of mine. He actually is now my mentor because he was one of my college roommates. He does videos teaching Korean. So he demonstrated a pathway where YouTube could make a living. And so he'd be the guy I'd go to ask questions. But long before either of us were doing YouTube, we were roommates together in college. And so Saturday would come and like, hey, let's make a video, you know. And so we'd make really silly videos about, you know, I don't even remember what any of them were. I just remember filming in like laundromats. And we did a parody of the scene in Back to the Future 2 where Marty returns to Hill Valley, but it's a different 1985 where Biff is corrupt and powerful. And, you know, they say, you know, this can't be Hill Valley. This is hell. And they say, well, I can't imagine hell would be that much worse, you know? So all the freshmen had taken over that complex when the school year changed, and the upperclassmen just had a little piece of it, you know. And I remember filming a parody of that. Yeah. Where, you know, is this Yview Park? No, but I can't imagine hell being much worse. So we had a lot of fun with that, you know. But nothing serious. Yeah. I worked in radio. I had radio production experience, you know, and so a lot of it was taking radio production experience of tight, punchy, loud sound that keeps you engaged, and then going, oh, well, I guess I just keep slapping clips on top of it to keep people. So if I'm talking about, you know, I did have Robert Wall's television production class now that I think about it. So we were making news stories there. So that did give me some.
Did you were going to be a radio guy though. Did you ever imagine you'd make a living in front of the camera?
No. And here's why. Right? Like,
you got that great hat though.
Yeah, I know. But have you ever seen a television news director who's like, yeah, sure, wear a hat.
Yeah,
you know,
probably not.
No, I just don't. I don't have the Todd hair there that's good on camera, you know. And so I think, but radio was always more fun anyway, because I knew people who did internships with TV stations, and they didn't really get to do all that much. They helped with writing and things, but and you get hired as a producer at a TV station. You don't get to do that much. You know, okay, sit at the assignment desk and answer the phones. Radio, oh my gosh, like they'll just come to you one day like, hey, we need a commercial. Here's the script. Go tape it. And every time, by the way, if you have to tape a radio commercial for a local station, they say it's a 30-second ad, but they give you 45 seconds of copy, and every word has to be in there.
Wow.
You know, so
talk fast.
It was bonkers. It's even worse if it's the other way around, where it's 45 seconds of copy, but it's a 1-minute ad.
Yeah.
They don't really do those in radio anymore, but and so you have to drag it out. You know. But and so radio, you get to do everything. So it's like, well, why would I want to work in TV? You know, and the radio people, like I say, they suffer common ailments. You know, there's a lot of bald people in radio, so you kind of fit in. You know, I think a lot of the radio people wanted to be TV people, but just for one reason or another, went the radio route.
I was always intrigued by radio. I did classical 89 reporting, you know.
Yeah, it's a fun job.
As a student. Yeah, it was great. And what was really cool is I didn't have to go out and personally be there to interview people. I could make a phone call, record that.
That's true. We did a lot of that.
Yeah, a lot of phoners, and we took newspaper writing also, and that. Yeah, get on the phone and get your sound bites, quotes.
Yeah.
You know.
I was really sad to see that come to an end, the Classical 89 newsroom. It just kind of quietly died off over about 5 years while I was there. Yeah. And to find out that, you know, almost every news person in this market at one point or another was working in news at Classical 89, I felt honored to have been part of that, even if it was at the very tail end of it. And, and I'm glad I wasn't lazy. I'm glad, you know, you could kind of skate in that job and just sort of run the Associated Press copy and just do the bare minimum. But I'm glad I got creative and stretched it and really tried to run with it.
Was Dwayne Roberts still there?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I learned a lot.
Was he the news director
as well? Yeah. So when did Road Guy Rob YouTube become your full-time gig?
So while I was looking for work, I did a little bit of construction. I had extended family members who, one of them, the house burned down. And, you know, the labor market was tight back then. And so I'm like, well, I guess I'm available. I was hoping I'd have an engineering job and buy my own house and fix it up, but sure, I'll fix up your house, you know. So I'm doing Road Guy Rob on the side. Pandemic hits. That changed everything because the pandemic, I'm living with elderly grandparents at that point because I'm still looking for a job. They're about 90. And I'm trying to realize I'm in a position I got to keep them alive. I can't bring COVID home. The construction projects had kind of wrapped up. And so I thought, well, what I can do is do what I did in news, is I'm going to do Road Guy Rob stories about actual transportation projects. I'm going to do a phone interview, sort of, but I'll do it on Zoom. So I have the video. Yeah. I'll reach out to the PR departments of the California Department of Transportation or different companies, or you know, that, you know, one of them in the pandemic was Wavetronics, right? Yeah. They reached out to me. But do stories and kind of get known by the PR people because I'm interviewing their people, and then that'll help me get a PR position. I even had an interview with Caltrans to be their PR person for the San Bernardino area, but I didn't get it, but I got interviewed. Yeah. So, but as time went on, you know, the videos, instead of getting 20,000 views, they get 30,000 views or 40,000 views. And then I did one where I interviewed, Phoenix, Arizona is interesting. If you go back to 1985, they had 2 freeways and like 4 million people. It was horrible. They had a great arterial road network, you know, like 6-lane roads with lights that they tried to time. But to get anywhere across town would take 45 minutes, you know, because there were no freeways. And they'd have a lot of rear end crashes because the light would turn red and all this freeway level of traffic would crash into each other. And most cities built their freeways out back in the 60s when they had money from the federal government to build out the interstate highway system. Well, by 1985, that was kind of wrapping up. The money was gone. And so they did one of the first sales tax measures to pay for freeways themselves. And in a period of 20 years, built out a huge modern freeway network that's probably one of the best in the country. And I thought that was an interesting story. And so I did a Zoom interview with a retiring administrator at the Maricopa Association of Governments who was there for all of that. I interviewed a guy named Detour Dan, who was the longtime traffic reporter for KTAR, which is KSL's sister station down in Phoenix. And they were great. And they just a lot of insight on it. I did a quick little trip to Phoenix, filmed some B-roll and stand-ups and everything, put it all together. And that video was like one of the first ones where I went to suddenly now having 20,000 subscribers and like 100,000 views on the video. You know, so there's kind of these breakout moments, like going up a staircase where it's like, oh, cool, I'm at a different level now, you know. And so I think that was the moment in my head where I said, okay. But
so that one video is where you thought, this can be my thing.
yeah, and I think because everybody was staying home, this is September 2020, everybody's staying home for the pandemic. It also, in a way I've never seen duplicated, I made $7,000 in 3 weeks. That's never happened again since. I don't make that kind of money. But that was a wake up of like me being me. I'm like, I may be in my late 30s, but I could stretch that $7,000 for 6 months, like let's make a bunch of videos, And so 2021 is where I really went all in and said, let's take this seriously. And it's, like I say, just been steady. I wish I had logarithmic growth where it took off like this, but it's been steady linear growth since then.
And what do you think the key to that growth is?
I don't know. That's the challenge, right?
Yeah.
Because when you're trying to figure out new media, it's constantly changing. I do think that people subscribe thinking that they like me, but I think it's actually the transportation that they like. One of the videos people love is for 20 minutes, I go through the sign manual, the manual and uniform traffic control devices, which is why stop signs look the same all over the country. And every road sign and pavement marking, double yellow line is the same in, one state to another. Road signs are like celebrity, like when you meet a celebrity.
Yeah.
And so, but it's kind of in reverse. Like in celebrity, you see them on TV and you see them on TV and see them on TV. And then suddenly you see them in real life and you're like, oh, that's exciting. It's kind of the other way around. All day in real life, you see these signs, you see these signs, you see these signs. And then you watch a video where the sign's there and you're like, I know that sign. It's in my neighborhood. And so because I'm going along with it for the ride, they're like, this guy's great. I want to subscribe to him. But really, it's the euphoria of the transportation concept or whatever that they have that aha moment. And I guess I get to go for a ride with that,
It's a small world. The transportation industry, we were at, a World Congress trade show last week, and everybody kind of knows everybody. So it's a small niche, small market, but you've managed to get viewers who are not transportation people. Why do you think average, as we called them in TV news, Joe Beer Can, just the average viewer, why are they interested in this?
Because everybody is a traffic engineer. They just don't know it.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody interacts for like 2 hours a day or more with this profession, typically behind the wheel. But even if you're not and you're walking around, you're still interacting with the traffic signals. You're interacting with the cars and the curbs and the lane markings and everything about it. And like I was saying, a lot about traffic engineering is very accessible to understand. Like a stop sign is not a complicated scientific concept. The idea of, we need to set a priority rule of who gets to go and who gets to stay. So you set a 2-way priority rule or a 4-way priority rule. If it's a small enough street, you set a no-way priority rule, and then people just kind of take turns based on who got there first, right? Like you'd see in neighborhoods. And so people already kind of know this stuff. They don't have the language to communicate it, and they don't have the just like this amount of education to kind of get over that little hill to start understanding it. But I think they want to. If everybody, take chemical engineering, right? If you have a chemical engineering conference and I drag 60 random people off the street and throw them into one of the breakout technical sessions, they're going to have no clue what's going on. I do that at a transportation conference. I drop 60 people in random session. They're probably going to grasp half of what we talk about, no matter how advanced the concept is, because every single day they're in the petri dish playing with it. I suppose if we lived in a world where we all culturally went home for 2 hours a day and played with chemistry sets, maybe we could go to a chemistry conference and people would care. But ours is the one discipline of science and engineering that the common person dabbles with constantly. So it makes it really accessible, because it's something that everybody already wants to know about.
And people are fascinated by it. They don't understand a lot of, or how much goes into traffic. And it's amazing when you find out when you have a career in transportation or traffic to know all of the fine details that go into just a simple intersection.
Well, and they have big, scary terms.
Yeah.
And so they sound really complicated, but like even I can understand them. Like you go to a long red light and you say, I wish I had more green. I'm tired of sitting at such a long red light. And so at a superficial level, the answer is we'll make the green longer and the red shorter. Well, that's fine if there's excess green for the other street. You should rebalance it. You don't want to have a bunch of wasted green for the street going this way that you could use for the street that's busier going this way that I'm on. But usually that's not what happens. What happens is this street's busy and this street's busy. Or this street's not busy, and that's why the red's so long, because I have to use all the green for this street. And so you explain that to somebody in about 30 seconds, and they go, oh, okay. So that's why I have to wait 60 seconds or a minute or a minute and a half to get my green light. And then they're more forgiving about it because they understand, I suppose the last thing I want to do is ruin this street that is busy. What I don't think people have patience for, but they could fix with a Wavetronic smart sensor, is when you have a street this way and I pull up to it and the other street's green, but there's nobody there. Yeah. And it's like, oh man, if you could just get this thing to switch quicker, I could be on my way. Or even worse, it takes so long for this street to time out that by the time I finally get my green, even though the cross street's been empty for 30 seconds and I've just been sitting there because it couldn't detect me. By the time I pull out, the traffic's now approaching, and now they also have to stop because they're waiting for me when I could have been long gone, And so that's an easy concept, and we use big terms, signal actuation and max green and minimum call time and all this stuff that even now you come to me and say minimum call time, I go like, but all that's saying is, when the light turns green, if somebody on the cross street flags hits the sensor and says, hey, I want a green, it's not going to like cut out my green light at like half a second. It's going to say, okay, minimum, you get 10 seconds of green no matter what happens, maximum call time is, well, even if nobody shows up on the other street, after like 2 minutes, we're going to make the light go red for a little bit anyway, just in case somebody's stuck or whatever, So these are easy concepts. We just have to communicate them like news people do to a kind of like sixth grade level. Mm-hmm. If a 12-year-old can understand it, then everybody can understand it. And then people are more forgiving of the profession.
Was there ever a time early on, or maybe even now, that you were worried about having enough ideas or content?
No, that was never a problem.
Yeah.
For every video I make, I get 3 additional ideas.
Nice.
My concern, and this has happened a few times, is I'm not going to get around to it fast enough, and other YouTubers who are starting to show up are going to beat me to it. Some of them are not in the transportation space, but one I've wanted to do for a long time is there's a long-time road sign font called Highway Gothic. They've used it since the 1950s, maybe even before. And then one that some scientists invented about 25 years ago called Clearview. And Clearview has some problems, and so they've had some in certain conditions, it's much easier to read, but in other conditions, it's harder to read. And so Federal Highway Administration has been slow to adopt it. In fact, at one point, they rescinded and said you can't even test with it anymore, and then Congress made it come back. And I wanted to do a video about those 2 fonts, and I saw just this past week, because we're taping here in August, some channel, I think it's called Half as Interesting or whatever, they did that video, and I go, it's not to say I can't do it, but the specialness of it's gone, But it's okay. I have 100 other video ideas, so we're going to be all right.
Their video doesn't have Rob's touch to it. Thanks for listening to the Wavetronics Pulse podcast. Come back next time as we pick up our conversation with Road Guy Rob Sanders.